If you've been struggling to improve in this game, it might not be your players, your tactics, or even your formation. It might just be that the play style you're using doesn't match the way you're trying to play. So in this video, we're breaking down all 5 play styles in the game and the formations that work best with each of them. If you really want to understand how the game works, I'd recommend watching the full breakdown because each playstyle has its own strengths and weaknesses. But if you're only interested in 1 or 2, you can also use the timestamps to jump straight to the playstyles you want. And even if you don't use all of these playstyles yourself, understanding each one will help you anticipate your opponent and defend smarter every match. So the first thing you need to understand is this. Not every playstyle in this game is meant to be played the same way. And the mistake many players make is that they switch to a playstyle simply because it is popular, not because it actually suits how they play. You see a lot of players doing this with long ball counter right now. Everybody hears the same thing. The defensive line is low, the defense feels safer, and suddenly everyone starts switching to it. But then the same players start complaining. They say it's very difficult to attack. They say their players feel far away. They say the playstyle is bad. But the truth is, the playstyle is not the problem. The real problem is that they're trying to play long ball counter like it's possession football. And that will never work. Every playstyle in this game is designed to mirror real football systems. That means every playstyle comes with its own strengths and weaknesses. If you try using the wrong way, it will always feel uncomfortable. Let's start with long ball counter. The main idea behind long ball counter is very simple. Defend deep and attack quickly. Whenever you lose the ball, your entire team drops back immediately. Your defenders sit deeper, your midfielders recover quickly, and your team becomes very compact. Players say it feels safe. But that same strength also changes how you must attack. Long ball counter is not designed for slow build-up. It is designed for direct attacks. When you win the ball, your attackers immediately start making runs forward. They are looking to run behind the opponent's defensive line as quickly as possible. That's why many top players who use this system focus heavily on through balls. If you've ever played against high-ranked players using long ball counter, you've probably noticed something. Their football is not pretty. They're not trying to pass the ball around the midfield for long periods. Instead, they keep looking for the same opportunity again and again, the through ball behind a defense. But here's the important part. They're not just randomly spamming passes. They wait for the correct moment. Before they release the pass, the player delivering the ball needs to be balanced and have space. Just like shooting, a good through pass requires the passer to be properly positioned. Top players understand this. They create a small pocket of space, then release the ball toward a striker who is already making a run. That's why many of them place instructions like anchoring or counter-target on their center forwards. The moment they win the ball, they already know exactly where their striker will be. Now let's talk about the formations that work best for long ball counter. The first one is the 4-2-2-2. This formation works extremely well because it gives you 2 strikers ready to attack the space behind the defense. When the counterattack starts, you always have 2 direct options in front of you. And because of the shape, it's very easy to combine with your attacking midfielders or wide midfielders, bring them into play, and set up chances for your strikers to exploit the space behind the defense while staying defensively compact without the ball. Another very effective formation is the 4-2-1-3. But you have to understand how to bring the wingers into the game. You don't always have to look for their runs in behind the defense. Sometimes you can play the ball into their feet and use them as creators. If your wingers have good passing, they can surprise the opponent by slipping a through ball to your striker when he's not expecting it. And it also works the other way around. If your striker is comfortable on the ball, you can use him to link play and release your wingers in behind the defense. And finally, the 4-3-3 narrow. This system works well because the attackers stay closer to each other, making it easier to combine quickly before releasing a run behind the defense. But again, the key thing you must understand is this. Long ball counter is not supposed to look beautiful. It is supposed to be direct, fast, and ruthless. Now let's talk about the most defensively solid playstyle in eFootball, long ball. A lot of players overlook this playstyle, but if you're the type of player that goals and prefers to keep your team structure intact, long ball can actually feel very safe defensively. Unlike more aggressive systems, your defenders and deeper midfielders usually stay in their positions. They don't rush forward too quickly, which helps your team maintain a strong defensive line and makes it harder for opponents to catch you out of shape when you lose the ball. But even though it's defensively solid, long ball is still quite flexible when you have possession. When you win the ball, your players will often look for the ball to feed, especially in midfield. This makes it easier to keep the ball and decide your next move instead of being forced into immediate attacks. At the same time, some attackers will still try to make runs behind the opposition defense, giving you the option to play those direct long passes when the opportunity appears. So instead of forcing constant counters or constant build-up, long ball gives you a balance. You keep a stable defensive structure while still having the freedom to choose whether you want to play short or go direct when the moment is right. When it comes to formations, most of the setups that work well for long ball counter will also work perfectly with long ball, so you usually don't have to change much. Now let's talk about another playstyle that many players are familiar with, possession game. Everyone already has an idea of what possession football looks like. It's about keeping the ball, building attacks patiently, and moving the opponent around until a gap finally appears. But in eFootball, possession game is actually one of the most demanding systems you can use. And the reason is simple. You're responsible for almost everything. Defensively, your line is still relatively high. Not as high as quick counter, but high enough that you cannot simply sit back and wait for the opponent. If you're using possession game and you're not pressing, you're basically dead. You have to pressure the ball. You have to close down spaces. You have to stay active defensively. But attacking with possession football also requires patience and discipline. You need to be comfortable holding the ball, recycling possession, and waiting for the right moment to break through. That means you're dealing with pressure on both sides. Defensively, you must press aggressively. Offensively, you must stay patient and composed. And that's why many players struggle with this play style. But here's the interesting part. The fact that possession game has so many disadvantages is also the reason it can be extremely powerful. Because if you master both sides, pressing and ball control, you gain complete control over the flow of the match. Now, when it comes to formations, possession game works especially well with systems that use wingers. Wingers give you width, which helps stretch the opponent's defense and creates more passing. But there's also an important tip when choosing your striker for possession football. Instead of using a forward who is constantly trying to run behind the defense, it is often better to use a deep-lying forward. A deep-lying forward naturally drops slightly deeper into midfield, helping your team link the attack and maintain possession. This creates more passing options and allows your attacking movement to feel much smoother. Again, this comes back to understanding what the system wants from you. Possession football is not about rushing attacks. It's about patience, control, and creating space over time. If you enjoy that style of play, this system can be incredibly effective. But if you're someone who prefers direct, fast attacks, possession game will often feel slow and frustrating. And that's exactly why compatibility matters. Now let's move to another play style that can actually be one of the most dangerous attacking systems in the game, out wide. The idea behind out wide is very simple. You want to stretch the pitch, create overloads on the wings, and attack the opponent from wide areas. When the ball moves to one side of the pitch, multiple players on that side will move forward to support the attack. This creates numerical advantages and allows you to combine quickly down the flank. Because of this, traditional 4-3-3 formations with two central midfielders and natural wingers work extremely well with this play style. Another option that works very well is using formations with wingbacks, such as systems that use 3 center backs and 2 wingbacks. These formations naturally provide width, which fits perfectly with the attacking idea of out wide. But defensively, this playstyle requires a bit more awareness. Because when many players shift to one side of the pitch to support the attack, it can sometimes leave gaps in your defensive structure if you lose the ball. That's why one very useful tip for out wide is to place your defensive midfielder on deep line. You can even combine deep line with defensive instructions if necessary. This helps ensure that when your team shifts toward one side of the pitch, you still have protection sitting in front of your center backs. Without that protection, you may sometimes notice your defensive line splitting apart when you lose possession. So out wide can be extremely dangerous in attack. But defensively, it requires discipline and awareness. Now finally, let's talk about the second most used playstyle in the game, quick counter. This is a system that many players love because of how aggressive and energetic it feels. Everything in quick counter is built around one simple idea: win the ball back as quickly as possible and attack immediately using short passes and combination play. The moment you lose possession, your players begin to press. Your midfielders step forward, your attackers close down defenders, and your team tries to recover the ball before the opponent can even organize their attack. That constant pressure is one of the biggest advantages of this system. If your opponent is trying to protect a lead or waste time, quick counter can make that extremely uncomfortable for them. Your players will constantly chase the ball, forcing mistakes and creating opportunities to regain possession in dangerous areas. And because your players are already positioned higher up the pitch, once you win the ball back, you can attack very quickly. This is why quick counter can feel very dangerous offensively. But like every other playstyle in this game, it also comes with a risk. Your defensive line is higher. That means if you press carelessly, or if your opponent manages to release a long ball behind your defense at the right moment, your center backs can suddenly find themselves exposed. This is usually the moment when quick counter users get punished. Not because the playstyle is bad, but because the pressing was mistimed. So if you want to use quick counter effectively, you must learn how to press intelligently. You need to understand when to step forward, when to hold your position, and when to delay the attack instead of rushing toward the ball. Now let's talk about the formations that work best with this system. Formations that work well with quick counter include the 4-2-2-2, the 4-3-1-2, and the 4-3-3 with two supporting strikers instead of traditional wingers. These formations work so well because they naturally create runs from multiple angles. Instead of only relying on your forwards, you often have players making runs from deeper areas of the pitch. That movement is very important because quick counter thrives on sudden forward runs and players arriving into attacking spaces at the right moment. When you use formations like these, the attack becomes much harder to predict, and you're able to create chances quickly before the opponent has time to reorganize their defense. If you enjoyed this video or found it helpful, make sure to drop a like. And if you want to see more breakdowns like this, consider subscribing. Thanks for watching.